Hello everyone. Good morning. Today we are going to discuss the topic, the history of special and inclusive education. But before that, I will introduce myself. My name is Raquel Armilia Jr. I hope all of us taking our bodies despite the pandemic, and I hope all of us stay safe and good health. Welcome to our topic. Let's start. Here's the learning objectives. Number one, define and understand special and inclusive education. Number two, discuss the history of special and inclusive education. Number three, create a timeline of history of special education. So, what do you imagine when you think about special and inclusive education? So in my opinion, uh, we are talking about exclusiveness, the separation, right? Because when we say special education need to be separated to a normal classroom, that is my first impression of special education. So how about you? Uh, what you what you imagine when you're talking about special education? Siguro kung siguro mayroon nandoon tayo sa class sa face to face ngayon, siguro may makapagtanong ako sa inyo. So by the way, the special education is tailored to meet the needs of students with disabilities. The services and support one child receives may be very different form that another child receives. It's all about individualization. So the primary of special education, of course, is a student with disabilities. So special education refers to a range of service that can be provided in different ways and different settings. So because of the individualization, and the special education is not a one way or one kind of education. It should be in different ways and different settings. It should be flexible. Some of they is handicapped or blind. So special education today, it's still focused on helping children with disabilities learn, but this no longer has to mean placing kids in a classroom all day long. So because before there is exclusiveness, there is separation, but now special education it becomes inclusive. So student with disabilities it should be included a normal classroom, but now no longer in placing kids. Why? There is no one size fit all approach of special education. It's tailored to meet each student needs. What's important is giving kids the resources they need to make progress in school. Uh, because there is no one size fit all, there should be a different curriculum, different distinct a practice approach or a methods when it comes to teach when it comes to teaching. Because individualization is different categorized disabilities. So there is no one size fit all.
The Individual with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, is a federal law that defines and regulates special education. The law requires public schools to provide special education services to children ages 3 to 21 who meet certain criteria. The children younger than 3 can get through IDA's early intervention services. This law means allow children ages 3 to 21 years old to enter public school with special education services. Access, making the curriculum accessible to students with disabilities, it's a lot like making buildings accessible to people in wheelchair. If there's a barrier to your child's learning, such as difficulty reading, the school needs to come up with the equivalent of wheelchair rank to help your child access the reading materials. School districts have a process in place to determine which students are eligible for special education. This process involves comprehensive evaluation that looks at the way your child thinks. It also looks at other aspects of his development. This means that school needs to help and improve your child's learning in any other possible way, and there's also a process to determine if your child are eligible for special education based the way your child thinks and other aspects of his development. In early 1800s, persons with disabilities were not taken in consideration and were often mistaken as being possessed by evil powers, cursed, or simply stupid. In 80s Enlightenment period, John Jacques Rousseau published his Emile, a book about the education of children. According to Rousseau, learning should happen in agreement with child's cognitive speed, with minimal outer stimuli from society, which is known for praising social rules and wealth. This idea to teaching children in their own pace set the ground for many educators.
Early 18th century, persons with disability were not taken into consideration and often mistaken as being possessed by evil spirit or evil powers, cursed, or simply stupid. Since people in early 18th century still ignorant on the differences of a person with disability, since it's new to them to see someone whose appearance is different from them. The 18th century is the Enlightenment period, which is Jean Jacques Rousseau publishes a book about the education of the children. According to Rousseau, learning of a child should be come with the agreement of his cognitive speed and also with the minimal outer stimuli from the society, which is known for praising social rules, wealth, and this idea of teaching children in their own piece of set the grounds for many educators, according to Johnson. As time passed by, a lot of people become more interested in special education, just like Samuel Gridley Howe, who was interested in the education of blind children, and in 1829 founded the first school for blind children in the United States that was called nowadays the Perkins School for Blind, and it is located in Massachusetts School for Idiotic and Feeble-Minded Children in 1848. In 1851, school opened in Albany. In 1853, the Pennsylvania Training School for Feeble-Minded Children was opened as well. And in 1857, Ohio State opened the Institution of Feeble-Minded Youth, and in 1858, the first school for retarded children was opened for retarded students in Connecticut. As time passed by, a lot of people give more importance in special education. In 19th century, special education became more palpable. It was noticeable and it was given more importance at, with the help and the effort of people like Reverend Thomas Gallaudet and Samuel Howe in taking action of the matter of special education. Reverend Thomas Gallaudet implemented the first school for the deaf in 1817, and the school was called the American Asylum for the Education of the Deaf and Dumb, and it is nowadays the American School of the Deaf. It was more given importance, and a lot of people become more interested in special education.
In 1906, the New York University included in the course offered by the school a training program for special education teachers. In 1918, ASTIS recognized that all citizens have the right to education, and in 1922, the Council for Exceptional Children, or CEC, was founded by Elizabeth Farrell. In 1927, the United States Office of Education established a section on the exceptional children, and in 1936, blinded persons are included in the Security Act of 1935. This law guaranteed that people with disabilities have the right to free and appropriate public education. In a least restrictive environment also, it required that each individual had his or her own educational plan or EIP, and that all people with disabilities had the right to a fair due process. In 1990, after being revised, Public Law 94-142 became known as IDEA, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, and has been revised again in 1997. Also, in 1990, the American with Disabilities Act was passed guaranteed that implementation would be made to people with disabilities in the work environment as well as in public transaction and telecommunication. That's all. Thank you.